Hello and welcome back to another full step-by-step PC build guide, and today I'm going to be showing you how to build a PC in Thermaltake's The Tower 250. If you see any parts you like, you'll find links to everything that I've used in the description, so let's make a start by taking a detailed look at the case. So before we can remove our tempered glass panels, there was two stickers at the top on each side holding the panels together for shipping. And once we've cut through these, we can simply push in the front panel at the top. It will pop out at the top, and then we're going to be able to lift it up and away. And the two smaller tempered glass panels can simply be pulled away. If we take a look at our rear panel, we've got a magnetically attached dust filter, and you can see we've got fan holes here, so you're going to be able to mount up to two 120 or 140mm fans on the back of this panel. To remove the panel, we can simply pop it out from the top and then lift it up and away. And I'll go ahead and remove our case accessory box. To remove our left side panel, we can pop it out from the top, and then we just need to lift it up to remove it. And taking a look at the back of this panel, you'll notice that we've got a magnetically attached dust filter. Our right side panel is removed in exactly the same way. And again, we've got a removable dust filter on the back of it. Taking a look at our top I/O, we've got power and reset buttons, we've got separate headphone and microphone jacks, we've got two USB Type A ports and a single Type C port. To remove our top panel, there's a gap at the back you can get your hand into and simply pull it off. So again, if we take a look at the inside of our top panel, there's a removable dust filter. The case's only pre-installed case fans are here at the top, and we've got two 120mm PWM non-ARGB fans installed as exhaust. And this is the maximum that you're going to be able to fit on this removable bracket at the top. If I go ahead and free up the fan cables, you'll see that our two fans are already connected together. And it's great to see that we've got additional PWM connectors. If we do want to add additional fans into the case, we can plug them into here. So to remove this top bracket, there's two thumb screws at the front we're going to need to loosen. And then we can tilt the bracket up and lift it up to remove it. Our case's only radiator mounting slot is on the right side. We're able to mount up to a 360 or 280mm radiator, although if you prefer, you can mount up to three 120 fans or up to two 140mm fans. This removable bracket is held on with two screws at the top, and once the screws have been removed, the bracket can simply be tilted out and lifted up and away. So now we've got the panels off, I want to orientate you in the case. So in terms of motherboard support, the case is only compatible with mini ITX motherboards, and you can see our four standoffs here. And our motherboard is going to be installed with the I/O facing towards the top of the case. So as we mentioned, your radiator mounting slot is on the removable bracket towards the right hand side of the case. Although if you do want to go with a CPU air cutter, you've got loads of support here, up to a maximum of 210mm. Take a look at the left side of the case. This is where your graphics card is going to go, and it's going to be hanging down from the top. And you can see that we've got three PCI expansion slots, although only two of them have brackets on it. In terms of your graphics card support, the maximum thickness that you're going to be able to fit here is up to 70mm. In terms of length, the maximum is up to 360mm, and to do this, you're going to see that your graphics card is going to hang down into this bottom compartment. So in the case accessory box, we do get this little cover plate, so it simply slots into here, and then we can push it down to lock it into place, and there is some gaps here for passing cables through. So while this cover plate will help improve aesthetics by hiding our power supply compartment, it does come at significant cost in terms of GP length, and with it in place, the maximum GP length is only 245mm. So with a large graphics card I'm planning on using, I'm going to have to leave it off. Our case's final fan mounting slot is at the bottom, and you can see our fan holes are here, and you're going to be able to mount a single 120 or 140mm fan. You're simply going to set your fan into place, and then you're going to use the long radiator screws from the case accessory box, go down through your fan and screw it in to the bottom of the case. Take a look down towards the bottom of the case, and we've got a removable panel here. You can simply get your hand in from the back and push it out. And again, we've got a removable dust filter on the back. In the case accessory box, we get this panel, and you're going to use it if you want to install the screen that Thermaltake offer as an option for this case. You can see we've got screw holes at the back, so your screen's going to sit into place and simply screw it in. And then you can push this panel into place. And again, I would take a closer look at these two side panels. Thermaltake are determined you're not going to get dust anywhere in this case, and we've got a removable dust filter on the back. We've got a full-length dust filter at the bottom of the case, and it can simply be pulled out from the front. Moving to the rear of the case, you can see we've got a rubber grommet beneath our motherboard, and we've got absolutely loads of space for cable routing. In terms of routing our cables, you can see we've got these little plastic clips to help manage our cables, and we've got another set on the other side of the case. Your drives are going to be mounted behind the motherboard on this removable tray, and it is possible to mount up to two 2.5-inch drives or a single 3.5-inch drive. So you're simply going to set your drives onto the bracket and screw them in from the back. And this drive tray is removable, so there's a thumb screw at the top we're going to need to remove, and then we can simply lift the drive bracket up and pull it out. Your power supply is going to go down at the bottom, and the case accommodates up to full-sized ATX power supplies up to a maximum length of 200mm. So out of the box we've got the SFX bracket installed, but in the case accessory box we get the ATX bracket as well. So you're simply going to install the bracket to the back of your power supply, and then you'll be able to slot the whole thing in. I'm going to be using an ATX power supply, so we just need to remove this SFX bracket, which is held on with 4 screws. We're now ready to start working on our motherboard, and we're going to be installing our CPU, our M.2 SSDs and our RAM before we install the motherboard into the case. To open the socket cover, we need to push this lever down, bring it towards the bottom of the motherboard, and then we can open the cover up. Holding our CPU by the edges and making sure we've got the text the correct way up, we're going to lower it carefully down into the socket. Once it's in, we're going to wiggle it from side to side and up and down to check it's sitting correctly. And once we're happy it is, we'll go ahead and close the socket cover down again. As we close the lever, the socket cover will pop off, and we'll put it into the motherboard box for safekeeping. To remove our M.2 SSD heatsink, there's a little lever here, so we're just going to try and get our finger into it and pull it up the way, and then we can lift the heatsink up and out. Now we do need to be careful because there is a fan on our heatsink and there's a cable running to the motherboard, so we're just going to set it carefully to the side. So we can go ahead and remove the plastic protection from the heat pad and also from the back of the heatsink. We can then set our M.2 SSD into the socket, and as we flatten it down, this clip is going to help hold it in place. And then all we need to do is replace our heatsink. We can go ahead and open the clips on our RAM slots, and then I'm going to line the RAM up with a slot, and once we're happy everything's lined up, it's just some firm pressure to the top, and it's going to clip into place. And then it's exactly the same thing with our second stick. Then we can install our second M.2 SSD on the back of the motherboard, and we're going to need to secure it with the included screw. Next, we can insert the motherboard into the case, line it up with the standoffs at the back. These 2 standoffs are elongated, so they'll go through the holes in the motherboard, helping hold it in place. We can secure the motherboard to the case using 3 of the screws with the flat head from the case accessory box. So because in this corner we've got a button to press to open our PCIe slot, we've got a thicker bit of plastic, so a standard screw isn't going to work. But included with your motherboard, you get these 2 elongated screws. They're the same length, but they've got different threads, and you're going to use the thread that matches your case. So for our case, it's the screw with the bigger thread. So next we've got our case cables to plug in. Our HD audio cable is going to go into this header here. So we can bring the cable in through the cutout, and we're going to need to plug it in with the HD audio text facing up the way. And you'll notice I've just routed our cable down the side of our PCIe slot, so it's going to be out of the way of our graphics card. Then we've got our front panel Type-C cable, which is going to go into this header here. So we can go ahead and bring it in through the rubber grommets, line it up with the header, and push into place. On second thoughts, I'm not a big fan of having so much of this cable on display, particularly given there is a little gap underneath our motherboard. So I'm just going to route the cable through the gap this time and plug it in. And I think that looks much tidier with less cable on display. Then we've got our front panel connectors, which are going to go into this header here with the front panel text facing down the way. And then we'll pull the excess cable through to the back. Unfortunately, because our USB 3.0 cable is quite big, it doesn't fit through the gap in the bottom of the motherboard, so I'm temporarily going to loosen up our motherboard to get the cable fitted through. We can line the cable up with the header, push into place, and then just pull all the excess cable through to the back. We're now ready to start working our power supply, and I plugged in a 24-pin motherboard cable, an EPS cable to provide additional power to our CPU, and a 12V 2x6 cable to power our graphics card. Next, we can set our ATX power supply bracket into place, and we'll secure it using 4 of the large power supply screws from the case accessory box. Then we can slide our power supply into place at the bottom of the case, making sure we've got its fan facing down the way. And we'll secure it into place using the 4 original screws. I'm then going to route our 24-pin and EPS power cables through to the back. And because we've got quite a big graphics card, I'm just going to make sure they're running nice and flat down at the bottom. So again, I've temporarily loosened up the motherboard to pass the cable through the gap beneath. And then we'll line the cable up with the motherboard and push into place. Our EPS cable is going to go into this header here. So we'll bring the pins through the cutout, line them up with a header and push into place. Then just put all the excess cable through to the back. I'm going to be installing a 120mm fan at the bottom set to intake. So we were using a standard fan, we would actually need to turn it around and have this ugly side of the fan on display. But one of the nice things about these Thermaltake fans is they do come with replaceable fan blades. So we are going to be able to add this reverse fan blade into place. So all we need to do is get our fingers in behind and just push this fan blade out. And then if we line our reverse blade fan up, and we'll simply push it into place. Then in terms of powering the fans, we've got this magnetic cable, and it's going to simply clip into place. So I'm just going to pass the fan cable through to the back, and then we'll set our fan into place. And then we can secure it at the bottom using 4 of the long fan screws. And in terms of plugging the fan cable in, all I'm going to do is plug it into the daisy chainable adapter in our top fans once I've installed them. So once we set our fans and radiator into place, it's going to be much more difficult to plug cables into this side of the motherboard. So I'm going to go ahead and get the cables plugged in before installing the radiator. This motherboard has a single system fan header, and we've also got our CPU opt header just above it. And these are non-standard connectors. So our motherboard comes with cable extensions. So all I'm going to do is plug the cable extensions into the motherboard, and then we'll pass the cables through to the back. The fans in our AIO have a similar magnetic connection to our bottom fan. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to leave this connector down at the bottom to plug into our fans on the radiator, and we'll pass the fan cables in through the cutout to the back. We've got 2 cables coming from the fans. The first is an ARGB cable, and there's 2 headers here, so we'll plug it into one of these. And our second cable is a PWM cable, and we've got a standard PWM header just below our 8-pin EPS power connector, so we'll get it plugged in. We're now ready to start working on our I/O, so we can set our fans onto the radiator. And one of the nice things about these fans is they will connect magnetically, so we just need to line them up, and they're going to snap into place. So we are going to be installing things with the tubes at the top. So we are going to want to have the elongated connectors facing towards the bottom, where they're going to connect onto that pre-routed fan cable. So you'll notice I've got the good side of the fans facing the inside of the case, meaning the radiator is going to be set in exhaust. And the reason for doing this is purely aesthetics. We would get much better cooling if we were to turn our fans round and have the radiator set to intake, so it was bringing cooler through the radiator and into the case. And looking at the layout of this case, this is probably the way this case should work. The downside is this is not going to look very good. One alternative you could do is, of course, pick up more of these reverse blade fans. So you'd have the good side of the fans on display, but they would actually be acting as intake on the side. And again, this would be the way this case is designed to be used. Problem with this is cost. These aren't cheap. And most people buying an AIO are going to want to use the fans that come with it. So I don't have a difficult CPU to cool, so I'm quite happy installing this set to exhaust. You can look at my temperatures. If you're happy with them, follow the build exactly as this is, and you'll be able to save yourself some money. If you're not happy, if you've got a more difficult CPU to cool, it might be worth picking up some reverse blade fans if you care about aesthetics. And if you don't, just simply turn the fans around. But if you don't care about aesthetics, I think you're building in the wrong case. We can then secure the fans to the radiator using the long radiator screws that come with the AIO. Then we can set our AIO bracket into place, and we'll secure it using the short radiator screws. And we're also going to need to assemble the AMD bracket for our pump. So it's just a matter of inserting this little clip up through here, and then we can take a thumb screw and put it on loosely. And then same thing on the other side. And then we just need to slide the bracket onto our pump. And importantly, if you are using the AIO from new, there'll be some plastic protection on the cold plate you're going to need to remove. So just before we set the AIO into the case, I'm going to take our magnetic fan connector that we've already plugged into the motherboard and connect it up to the AIO. Then I'm just going to pass our tubes into the case. We can set the bracket into place at the bottom. There we go, that's just dropped into place. And we'll get the bracket secured at the top using the 2 screws. And at this stage, we can replace our right side panel. Next, I'm going to add some thermal paste to the center of the CPU. And then after removing the plastic protection from our cold plate, we're going to line our pump up with the motherboard brackets. We're going to try and get the clips we've installed over the brackets on the motherboard. Okay, so that's both the clips in place. All we're going to have to do is tighten each side up in turn. So I've already plugged in a PWM adapter to our AIO pump header. So we'll take the PWM cable coming from our pump and plug it into it. And then all I'm going to do is pull all the excess cable through to the back. So we've got one more cable to plug into our AIO, and it's the USB cable to control what comes up on the screen. So what I'm going to do is plug the cable into the pump, and I think the best place for routing it is in behind our tubes. So we'll just pass it in through here, and we'll just route all the excess cable through to the back. If we pull our front panel connector to the side, you can see our USB 2.0 header. I'm just going to route the USB cable through underneath the motherboard, and we'll get it plugged into the motherboard. And then what we can do is just route our front panel connector over the top, and it's going to help hide the black cable. We're now ready to install our graphics card, and we're going to need to remove the expansion slot bracket covers at the top. They're each held on with a thumb screw. And to open the clip on our PCIe slot, there's a little button at the bottom we can press. So I've just put our 12 volt 2x6 cable out and left it to the side to plug into our graphics card. And then I'm going to slide the graphics card into place. So we'll go ahead and get the graphics card lined up with a slot. Once we're happy everything's lined up, it's just some firm pressure, and the graphics card is going to clip into place, and we'll secure the graphics card into place with the thumb screws we've just removed. So the graphics card only comes with 2 thumb screws at the top, but these are the same thread as our power supply screws, so I'm going to use one of the power supply screws to secure the 3rd slot. Then we can go ahead and get our 12V 2x6 cable plugged into the graphics card, and then we'll just tuck excess cable through to the bottom. So this graphics card is 70mm thick, which is the most this case will support, and it is pretty much flush, so I don't think you're going to be able to extend it at all. So we can go ahead and replace our left side panel. So take a look in from the top, you can see the major disadvantage of the tower case, and that is accessing your motherboard and graphics card I/O means you're going to have to remove the top panel and also the fans. So what you're going to want to do at this stage is plug any cables you need into your motherboard or your graphics card, and your cables are then going to route out through this cutout and out through one of these 2 cutouts here. So I'll show you how that works. I'm going to pass one cable through here, and then we can plug it into the motherboard. So at this stage, we're able to replace our top fans. So we'll just set the bracket into place and then tilt it down, and then we can go ahead and reinstall the bracket. We can take the cables coming from our fans and we'll just pass them down through the cutout at the back, and then we can replace our top panel. So at the back of the case, we've got the PWM adapter we've already plugged into our system fan header. So we'll go ahead and take the PWM cable coming from our top fans and plug it into the adapter. Coming from it, we've got a daisy chainable connector, so we can take the PWM cable coming from our bottom fan and plug it into it. All that remains is to do a little bit of cable management, and remember we do have those clips at the side to help manage the cables. So there we go, not a single cable tie needed. The clips at the side do a great job of managing all the cables. So we can go ahead and replace our rear panel. And then all the cables from your graphics card and motherboard are going to be coming out this cutout at the top. We've already mentioned one of the downsides, in that you have to take the top of the case off, take the fans out before you can plug them in. The other downside is you're using quite a lot of the cable routed in the PC case itself and then getting down to the bottom of the table. So you might actually need to use some cable extensions. And the third thing is you're actually going to be able to see all the cables plugging into your motherboard. There's no actual cable cover like there is in some of the other tower cases. While the white cable looks quite good, the black cable does stand out, so I would recommend color matching your cables to the case. We can then replace the tempered glass panels. So I've gone ahead and got the PC set up. If you don't know how to do that, you'll find a video that covers everything you need to do after building your PC. There's also a separate video for setting up the AIO screen, and both those videos are linked in the description. In terms of our temperatures, our 9700X idled at 41 degrees and reached a maximum of 72 degrees during a 10-minute IDA64 stability test. The AORUS 5070 Ti idled at 28 degrees and reached a maximum of 60 degrees under load. In terms of noise, we had average noise levels of 39 decibels at idle and 54 decibels under load. So in terms of building the Tower 250, it was a pretty easy case to build in. Just make sure you do things in the same order that I've done them. And really the only issues I ran into were after I tried to power the PC on. I noticed a vibrating noise, and it did seem to be coming from our graphics card. So it seemed that the fans on the graphics card were rubbing up against the dust filter. And I ended up having to remove the dust filter to allow the left side panel to stay in place without catching on the GPU fans. So taking a look at the specs of the graphics card I've used, the width is 70mm, which is the maximum this case should support. So it wouldn't be ideal to run this without the dust filter in place. Your graphics card is just going to get absolutely full of dust, so you might not want to push things as hard as what I've done with graphics card width. So moving on to the things I like about the case, and the first thing I always love about all the tower cases from Thermaltake is the aesthetics. I think they look absolutely stunning. Other things I like about this case is just look at the footprint it takes up on the desk. It's absolutely tiny, and for the amount of hardware that you can fit in it, 360mm I/O and absolutely massive graphics cards. If you've got a small desk, this may well be a solution. Limited space on the desk, but quite a bit of space going up the way. So moving on to the things I didn't like about the case, and there is two weaknesses to this sort of case design. I've already touched on one of them, and that is the fact that your cables have to be routed from the top all the way down to the back of the PC. So you can run into issues with cable length, and the other issues is an absolute pain in the ass to have to remove the top panel and the top fans every time you want to plug something in to the motherboard. The other thing to be careful of is that not all graphics cards will be happy in this upright position. Some cards will just not enjoy it with the I/O at the top and they will overheat. This particular Aero card seems perfectly happy and the temperatures we're getting here are really good. So there is also a few things specifically I don't like about the Tower 250. The first is that all the cables plugging into your motherboard are going to be visible at the top. There's some of the other Thermaltake cases where they actually had an I/O cover where you couldn't actually see the cables being plugged in, so it's a bit disappointing that the Tower 250 doesn't have this. So while I didn't think it was a big deal that only 2 expansion slot brackets were included with the case, the third one didn't have a bracket on it, I did think it was a little bit disappointing that only 2 thumb screws were included. So for this 3-slot card, I actually had to remove one of the power supply screws and use it to secure the graphics card. The last 2 things I wasn't a big fan of, and I did think they slightly ruined the aesthetics. The first was the multicolored HD audio cable. It was probably a bigger issue with the particular motherboard I've used because the HD audio connector is quite prominent on the motherboard. And I also wasn't a big fan of the red and blue light for the power LED and hard drive indicator LED on the case. And I think actually white would have worked better. So in terms of pricing, the Tower 250 is currently on sale, and in the UK it will set you back just under £140. But should you rush out and get it? Well, I think it depends on what you're looking for. If you're looking for a mini ITX case that takes up a minimal footprint on your desk but can fit absolutely massive hardware with really good temperatures, this may well be the case for you. And just remember that you aren't going to have to go with a mini ITX motherboard, which is going to be more expensive than a bigger motherboard, and there's going to be limitation in terms of things like the number of M.2s that you're going to be able to put in it. So if having a really small footprint in your desk isn't a big issue, you might want to consider one of the bigger Tower cases. Hopefully you have enjoyed this full step-by-step PC build guide. If you have, please remember to give it a thumbs up, and if you're not currently subscribed to the channel, please hit the subscribe button as well.